Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you locally by our friends over at Caesars Atlantic City, Wild Wild West, Tropicana. The ultimate sports experience is closer than you think. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. Andrew DiCecco, InsideTheBirds.com is here. A lot to dive into. Eagles and the Broncos. It's the really the first look at the matchups we're going to take a look at all week long here with Andrew. But before we get there, Andrew DiCecco, I want to ask you, there was a message out there on Twitter yesterday suggesting that Howie Roseman will be in attendance tonight at Heinz Field. He'll be checking out the college game between Pitt and North Carolina. It's Kenny Pickett against Sam Howell. What is your take on those two quarterbacks? Are they two guys that you would have interest in, I guess, I don't know, where would you anticipate those guys being drafted? I guess we could ask that too, but are these two guys that you have your eye on for the draft next year?
Well, because they play a premium position of quarterback, they're going to go higher than than their talent probably would allow them to go. I think they're going to go right in the 10 to 15, 20-ish range. I'm personally a Kenny Pickett guy. I think he's a good dual threat quarterback. I think he's a risk taker, which sometimes works, against him a little bit. And he sees the field really well, good ball placement, and I think tonight he could easily throw for 450 to 500 yards. And I think he's going to be a player to watch. But I don't know that he's going to be an immediate upgrade or a substantial upgrade, and particularly when you're looking at the Eagles and their defensive situation, I think you need to allocate those picks to really start to add some cornerstone prospects on the defensive side of the ball.
Right. So I guess a lot of fans would wonder, are they worth a premium first-round pick, one of those two guys? Howell, at one point, I guess, Andrew, was thought to be a possible number one overall pick. I think he's been a little disappointing this year.
Yeah, he regressed a little bit, much like Jalen Hurts. I mean, he's someone that I think doesn't see the entire field. He's not as athletic as Kenny Pickett. He's very accurate, though, but he's a limited player, and I think some of those blemishes really came to light this season. And I mean, I don't think either one of those players, in my opinion, given the deficiencies on the Eagles roster, I don't think you can afford to show out another premium draft pick on a quarterback. I mean, I think those picks would be better served addressing the defensive side of the ball and maybe wait until the next year. I would personally go into next season with Jalen Hurts and start to fix other parts of your roster. And then if you figure out that Jalen Hurts isn't the answer, well, then you address it and you have now a roster to, something around him to sort of build around.
Okay, now is that based on the talent in this year's draft? In other words, if there was a quarterback that you liked, that was worth taking, would you consider him as opposed to this class just doesn't have a guy that you would take in the first round? Based on, hey, Hurts is good enough, stay with him. There's not a guy in this draft that supersedes him.
I don't know that I would still do that. I mean, you have two aging defensive tackles that have a very high price tag. You have two 30-year-old safeties. I mean, that defense is not going to be able to compete next season as it currently, is constituted. So I think that you need to really start to add some young building blocks on that side of the ball, because no matter who you get, if you add a young quarterback, there's not going to be much around him for him to win with. I mean, with the state of the defense right now. So I think it makes more sense to go into next year with Jalen Hurts and start to fine-tune other areas of the roster and then move forward.
Okay, now that brings me to the next part of this question. If you don't like either of the – I get it, you're doing your due diligence here, and I got to commend you for that. On the other hand, what's the message to your quarterback that you're going to watch two guys play tonight that could – you know what I'm saying? Like, is it almost counterproductive if you don't view these guys as first-round picks? What's the message to your quarterback? I mean, you wouldn't go watch these guys. I mean, the teams that are going to watch him, I guess, let's see. There's 5 GMs at least. Pittsburgh, yes, they need a quarterback. You've got Denver, yeah, they need a quarterback. The Vikings, they got a situation with Cousins, but what's the message to your current quarterback when you're going to watch these two guys?
Well, if it was the other quarterback that they had last year, I think that would have him somewhat of a different effect. But this is Jalen Hurts. I think that if anything, that would only motivate him and have him, kick it up a notch. He's a very competitive player and someone that's is a very driven player. But it wouldn't even surprise me if he's not even mindful of it at all, and he's just moving forward and focused on this week, because even when he was being asked about Deshaun Watson last summer, he was really just focused on the task at hand. And he said, I believe he kept saying, I'm above it all, I'm above it all. He doesn't seem to me as somebody that's going to really invest himself in something that's not productive and worrying about things that are out of his control. I mean, Howie Roseman's doing his due diligence, as any general manager that has some premium picks should. I mean, this is a quarterback position that we're talking about here. But if I don't know that it's going to send any sort of message to Jalen. I think he's just focused on winning this week.
So let's get into winning this week. And Jalen Hurts, some would say very Jekyll and Hyde this team is. This Eagles team, when they're good, they're really good. They've won 44-6. They won 32-6. So they've had their moments. When they're bad, they give up a lot of points. They struggle to put points on the board. They struggle to consistently move the ball. A lot of that has changed offensively with the run game here. How does the run game work this week against Denver?
Well, Denver has a pretty stout defensive front. They have Draymond Jones, they have Mike Purcell, Shelby Harris, and they have some good pass rushers on the outside that I like Malik Reed, and they have Baron Browning, who I talked about on your show extensively, who went to Ohio State. They took him in the third round, inside linebacker. He's playing pretty well. They're pretty stout on defense, Mike. So I don't know that there's going to be a lot of running room. It's going to be tough sledding for the running backs here. I mean, they still have to try to show that they're going to commit to it. But, this is going to be a game and a week that's going to be very telling with Jalen Hurts. He's going to have to lift the offense with his arm. He's going to have to make plays more so than he did last week. And this is going to really put his growth to the test, and see where he's at and see if he's able to move the needle and be the passer that the Eagles really need if they want to move forward with him as their franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I'm interested to get some of your thoughts on these matchups because, as you just said, their defensive situation. It shouldn't be as easy to run the ball as it was against the Chargers last week, Detroit the week before. So this is a team that has a pretty good secondary as well, though, right? I mean, so if you're depending on his arm, he's going to be challenged this week.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Fuller, they have Pat Surtain, they have a veteran like Kareem Jackson, the safety. Justin Simmons had a really big season a couple years ago, remains to be a very underrated back-end player. And former Eagle Ronald Darby's there as well. Not a very productive player, but he's still a veteran player that's played a lot of football. So, I mean, he's going to be challenged on no matter what. The offense here is going to be challenged, and this is going to be not only a big test for Jalen Hurts, but also Nick Sirianni to see how he's able to sort of overcome some of these challenges that you're going to be facing because they're very stout against the run. And then, some of his receivers are going to be challenged by a guy like Pat Surtain and a veteran corner like Kyle Fuller. Can these guys win their matchups? And can you get Dallas Goedert involved? These are going to be things that has been very sporadic all season, and this is really going to come to light this week.
Yeah, this is a team that dominated a very good Dallas offense last week, and I think a lot of that had to do, some of it. I don't want to say a lot of it. Their defense is very good. Dak Prescott just seemed off last week. But they do a really good job of stopping the run and then making you try to make plays. And then with Dak not on his game last week, they're very good. So this is one of the better defenses that Philadelphia will see. And you wonder, okay, they stopped the run really well. They're very good in the secondary. Where do you get yards on this team if you're Philadelphia?
I think you can get it on the short to intermediate levels of the field, which means that it's going to be the tight end. I like their linebackers, as I mentioned, but guys like a Malik Reed, and even on the other side, they have Jonathan Cooper, who was a seventh-round pick, and he's sort of blossoming a little bit here, coming on and over in the last couple of weeks. But those areas can be taken advantage of and exploited by a running back like a Kenny Gainwell. I think he's going to have a more prominent role in the game plan this week. Dallas Goedert. Boston Scott, we have not really seen him utilized as a receiver yet. I think that could also come into play. And then also getting a guy like Jalen Reagor, get him going, get him on the move, get some jet sweeps, and get some short passes where he's able to utilize his short area quickness and acceleration and hopefully generate some sort of offense, because we really have not seen him make an impact at all this season. And those I think Devontae Smith he's not going to have, in all likelihood, the type of week that we saw last week with Pat Surtain playing and their veteran secondary back there. So I think he could be bottled up a little bit, but there will be opportunities to strike in the middle to intermediate levels of the field.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I think Reagor, is the jury out on him? Are you still holding out hope as he is what he is? I mean, we were hoping that Sirianni, a wide receiver coach, was going to be able to get more out of him. I still don't think they've utilized him all that well in the offense. Now, that being said,
right,
they have kind of transitioned to running the ball more, which has certainly phased the receivers out more. But have we come to terms with Reagor is just what he is?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if you're still questioning how a first-round wide receiver needs to be utilized, that there is a big problem. I mean, a first-round wide receiver should be able to contribute on all three levels of the field. They should be able to. They shouldn't have limitations or certain tendencies that you have to try and find a way to exploit against teams. I mean, they should be an every down wide receiver in all likelihood, in an ideal situation, not someone that you have to figure out, oh, hey, can we get him on some jet sweeps? Can we get him on some end arounds and some dump offs and this, that, and the other thing? That's just window dressing. I mean, I think he's going to be a third or fourth receiver for the majority of his career, and someone that will have, a flash play here or there, but not be a consistent piece of an offense. He's not going, his route running is pretty poor for where he's at right now, into his second season. Given the wide receiver-centric coaching staff that's working with him, he's not a very good route runner. He's not detailed in those areas. He rounds off his routes. When he runs down the sideline, he gets easily squeezed out of bounds. He's not very mindful of the sideline, and these are things that, as a first-round wide receiver, it should be innate. These things should not have to be taught or harped on, and you should be able to be a relatively prominent contributor on the offense by now, not someone that has to be sprinkled in or shoehorned in.
That's a good point well put by Andrew DiCecco. Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. Let's take a look at, obviously, the Eagle defensive side of the ball. And you got Slay and Nelson. It looks like Maddox thinks he's going to play. And we don't know about Slay. That's going to be up in the air here. But we keep kind of wondering how they did make some changes. They have made some, adjustments. They've tried a lot of different things. But one thing they really haven't tried yet, at least consistently, Andrew, is telling the two corners, press man up, let's send some more pressure. Is this a good matchup to try to do that? Because we know Teddy Bridgewater, he's another one of these quarterbacks. While he's not elite, he does like to just kind of nickel and dime his way up the field.
Yeah, that's his tendency. Teddy Two Gloves. He's another one that's going to do those, much like Derek Carr did with Hunter Renfrow and Foster Moreau, like attacking those short to intermediate levels of the field, which has been very problematic for the Eagles. I mean, the Eagles, to their credit, to Jonathan Gannon's credit, if you can't. There's not much great things to say about the defense, but what you can say is they're not giving up those explosive big games to these wide receivers. And the Broncos don't really have a lot of explosive wide receivers. They have guys that are really good contested catch guys like Cortland Sutton, like Tim Patrick, who in my opinion is one of the most underrated wide receivers in football. And Jerry Jeudy is someone that I have pinpointed to have a very big game. He's someone that is an elite separator, terrific route runner, and knows how to find the soft spots in zone. So he's someone that I think could easily rack up 6 to 8 catches and be one of those guys that just like Keenan Allen last week, that just continuously moves the chains and keeps these drives alive. So he's someone that I would watch. They have a really good receiving core there. So I would apply pressure on Teddy Bridgewater. I don't think he handles that particularly well. And get those corners to press up on some of these big receivers, and make them win that way, because they're not, more often than not, they're not really going to beat you down the field. That's not their MO. They're these tough. They're going to win these 50-50 balls, but challenge them at the line of scrimmage, and apply some pressure on Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, and look, when Slay has been matched up with guys, he's been pretty good. Does Denver have that guy that you really need to lock down one-on-one. Like, I don't feel like they have that number one guy. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with Slay, if he even plays. Who knows? I mean, hamstring problems, that could keep you out for a little while here. All right, so we'll see what Slay's availability is during this week. Big play Slay, of course, for a reason, but if he misses the game, that's a huge boost to the Bronco offense. The Bronco offense, how about running the football? Last week, man, they punched Dallas in the face, they then punched him in the gut, and then they kicked him on the side and said, get out of my way. Dallas couldn't stop him at all last week. If Dallas don't stop him on the run, what are they going to do to the Eagles' rush defense?
Yeah, this is a game. You look at Melvin Gordon, you look at the rookie Javonte Williams. These are two guys that will be starting on most teams in the NFL. Melvin Gordon surprised me. He's still playing at a high level. He's healthy, which has been a problem for him. And they sort of have a really good 1-2 tandem, and they have they both present different elements to the offense. And I think that they're both really good running between the tackles. I think you can get Javonte Williams out, in the flat to catch some of those dump offs and make it tough for those linebackers to come up and make those tackles. I really like the Broncos offensive line as well. They have young players in Dalton Reisner, who was their second-round pick in 2019. They have Lloyd Cushenberry, their center, and then they have Quinn Meinerz, who they took out of Wisconsin Whitewater in the third round this year. A really young nucleus up front that are people movers. So that's something that the Eagles' defensive line is going to have to figure out a way to sort of counter, because I anticipate Denver coming out looking to run the football down their throats.
Yep, they did it last week to Dallas, so I'm going to imagine they're going to try to do that again. And then, of course, every week it seems that you got to go over the tight end situation. And this is a Denver team that has invested in the draft in the tight end. I know Font's been banged up. We don't know what his situation might be. But this is where teams have just been having their way with Philadelphia.
Yeah, whether it's Noah Font or whether it's Albert Aquanubum, I think I pronounced that right. That's one of those names that even throughout the whole draft process, I never was entirely sure how to say that. He went to Missouri, but he went to Missouri. He was a fourth. So they have two guys there that can really attack defenses and affect different levels. Obviously, Noah Font's the more athletic of the two. But the Eagles' linebackers are going to be challenged. Obviously, we talked about some of the alterations that Jonathan Gannon did to his defense. There wasn't much he could do with the linebacker situation, except he found a competent duo in Davion Taylor and T.J. Edwards. T.J. Edwards is going to be a big, prominent fixture on defense this week, trying to stop the run. But I think Davion Taylor, as athletic as he is, and you love his sideline speed, but he's not entirely sure what he's doing or where he's going. Not the most instinctual player, a year and some change into his career, and I think that he can lose some of these guys in coverage, and I think they're going to take advantage and continue to pepper his side of the field with targets.
You know, over at Inside the Birds, they have the Q&A show with Jason Avant and Quentin Michael, and they were talking about today about John Gannon's defense. And it sounded like he's saying they're not in unison. You got Slay, up on the ball. You got Maddox 6 yards off. You got Nelson 10 yards off. Is that something that we see as one of the issues with this team, is that the corners maybe aren't, in unison together? Because I guess they're suggesting, hey, as a corner, you can kind of get your comfort level. If they're not telling you to play press, you kind of go where you feel like you're most comfortable. So how do you kind of, when what they were talking about today, I was trying to talk to Moshe about this yesterday, in that, is it a personnel thing? Is it a coaching thing? Do they not have good enough players? To what I said, look, your best two players are Nelson and Slay. I'm not saying they're great, but they're your best two. Have them play press. Right. Send the linebacker, not all the time, but get pressure with your linebacker. It seems that they say to the guys, you guys off the ball, let them catch the ball 7-8 yards, and the linebackers are giving up plays. You're putting way too much on the linebacker's plate. So use the linebacker to get more pressure and pressure with your corners, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would do. I would put a little bit more pressure with the corners, and I think something interesting is that Steve Nelson was playing off and Slay was pressing more. Well, Steve Nelson doesn't have the long speed that Darius Slay has. Could be a little bit to protect against the deep ball and those explosive plays that can be detrimental, obviously. But I would put both of those guys up front, challenge these guys. Steve Nelson, he may not have the long speed, but he's very physical, and he surprised me on the perimeter as a tackler, very hard-nosed player. So get those guys up, challenge these guys, the Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, even Jerry Jeudy, although he can separate a little bit downfield, that's not what he's best suited to do. So challenge these guys. They're not going to really hit you with a double move that you can't. Flip the game like that. And let's apply some pressure on Teddy Bridgewater. I think that's the recipe, particularly against this quarterback. I think that you can. It's rattled and it could really change the whole, the way the game unfolds. So that's how I would do it. And
it's almost like, what do you want to die from, 1,000 cuts or just take one knife to the gut? You are going about the way of 1,000 little cuts over the first 10 weeks of the season. Hey, if you are realizing that we just cannot do that, let's try something different. Hey, if you get beat once in the game, that happens, right? I mean, it's almost as like he just doesn't want to make that big mistake. Because Moshe brought up the point that their receivers, their corners give up the fourth least amount of yards in the league. I said, well, of course they do. They're playing 10 yards off the ball. They're letting everybody catch the ball in front of them.
Yeah, they come up and make the tackle. I mean, yes, I've even actually used that analogy and written about, the Jonathan Gannon has adopted a death by 1,000 cuts approach. You're trying to force the quarterback to make a mistake down there on these long extended drives. But, you'd almost rather see them at least try. If they're going to give up an explosive play, okay, well, at least they're trying something. I mean, you can't leave any stone unturned here, especially when you're working with a very limited personnel. So that's the way that I would approach this week.
Yep, you got. Hey, look, and this is like most teams in the league, Andrew. It's a flawed Denver team. They've got a solid defense, but there's a reason they're 5-4 as well. They have their problems. They don't have this huge playmaker. The quarterback doesn't push the ball down the field. So it's going to be interesting. How do you kind of see this matchup going? Kind of give us your outlook for this one.
I think this is one of those games where Denver tries to, establish the run, and I think that they do so. I don't think you're going to see Teddy Bridgewater have a huge impact as a passer in this game. I also think that Jalen Hurts is going to surprise and really make some big-time plays with his arm, and he's also going to make some plays with his leg, much like you saw in the fourth quarter of last week's game. And I think that, knowing how close the Eagles were last week, I think that there were some positives to glean from that game, and I think that they're going to build on those positives and carry it over this week and get a narrow victory there in Denver.
All right, there you go. Andrew DiCecco, football at 4, likes Philadelphia narrow. Look, they have 3 wins. They've all come on the road. It's a road game. Very tough place for Philadelphia to play. Before you run, I want to get your thoughts. Odell Beckham, 1-year deal. He's going to the Rams. What do you think?
Well, on our ITB preseason season predictions, I took the Rams and the Bills in the Super Bowl. I really liked what they were building there in L.A. I like Matt Stafford. I love Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, but now you add Odell Beckham to that, and now it's going to be on Matt Stafford to see. He's never really had to deal with this kind of pressure before, so now it's like, okay, you have all the tools here that you need to thrive and take us to the next level. What are you going to do? Can you do it? Can you stay healthy? So, I think that's a great place for him to go. I think if you're Odell Beckham and you're weighing the options between Green Bay and L.A., I think it's kind of a no-brainer. Go to L.A. or go to Green Bay, which is frigid at this time of year. We'll see how it goes. But Matt Stafford has not really had this plethora of weapons at his disposal and this amount of pressure on him. So we'll see how he responds.
All right, Andrew DiCecco's back on Tuesday. We'll look back at Eagles and Broncos, and, of course, football at 4 tomorrow. Adam Kaplan is here. Adam Kaplan tomorrow, football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. Andrew, have a great weekend. Enjoy all the football, man.
You too, Mike. Talk to you next week.